Hello my friends, welcome to Talk to Me Tuesday for Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019. This is Jennifer. It was a very busy but slightly weird week last week. I did get all of my quilts turned into Linus on Saturday, the 6 that I showed you in my little mini quilt show last week, and that was very satisfying to get those turned in. I don't remember if I told you or not, but my goal for the year is 18 and I just turned in 6, so I feel like I might have a good chance at making it by December. The quilt top that I made the week before that I mentioned last week is on my wall behind me. This is all orphan blocks that I pulled out of my orphan block collection specifically for the Linus connection. And just to be clear, most of these orphan blocks are things that I did not make. And not just these, but the ones in the orphan block bin are ones that were donated that I then take and sort and make into quilt tops. These were 9 orphan blocks that were 12, 13 inches. I sized all of them up so they're 15 inches with seam allowance because my biggest ruler is a 15-inch square, and I used just random strips and whatever that were in the right color family to make them the right size. Sewed them together and then added a little top and bottom piece, so this will make a nice teen size quilt. This gives me 3 quilt tops for practice, and I want to do some practice quilting before I start working on my Sweet Reflections quilt. Rainey was showing a quilt that she's quilting on, and when she was showing it I noticed that she's quilting the exact pattern that I've been doodling that I want to work on my Sweet Reflections quilt. I will put the link to where I found the tutorial for this because I cannot think of it off the top of my head. This is actually a free motion tutorial for sit-down machine, but the way it is explained works perfectly for doing on a mid-arm or a long arm as well. This is a flower pattern that I've been doodling. I have sheets and sheets of this, so I'm just trying to get the muscle memory first. Then my plan is to practice it on the 3 Linus quilt tops I have before I move on to do it on my quilt top. My goal for this year is to improve my free motion quilting and to add to my free motion quilting library because I love meandering and stippling and I love swirls, and that's usually all I do, so I'm gonna try to expand this year and do just more variety of patterns. You might notice right over here there's a little half planet. I did start my row for the Star Trek row along. Row 1 is the original series. We started our quilt along last week. The row along, you have 2 weeks to do your row because the row is multiple patterns. So instead of just giving you 1 week to do all of those patterns, you have 2 weeks until the next pattern post. Our first row was designed by Chris Clayton. He's a brand new Fandom and Stitches designer, brand new quilt designer, and he's done a beautiful job. And I have had a blast going through and pulling batiks for my row along quilt. Speaking of which, my digging around for batiks sort of turned into an all-out clean out last week. I had a couple of nights where I had trouble sleeping and I got up a couple hours earlier than I normally would, and I just came in my sewing room and I went through every drawer. At this point I have probably been through 95% of the fabric that's in my sewing rooms. I cleaned out strips that were random strips that were offcuts from stuff. I cleaned out scraps. I cleaned out so much stuff, and in the meantime I managed to fill an entire bin with batik fabric because when I first started saving fabric and collecting fabric, I sorted it entirely by color. I didn't do collections. So as I was going through all the colors, I was pulling out tons of batiks. And so I have a mound of batiks now that I can use for my Star Trek row along, and that's entirely what I'm using. I'm using all batiks. So not only did I get the fabric I needed, but I feel very satisfied that my fabric is organized enough so I can find things now. I ended up donating a lot of the scraps and strips and stuff to Linus because I have plenty. Anything that I really wanted to keep, I put in a big bag, and I've been just running it through my AccuQuilt, making 2.5-inch squares and charm squares and 2.5-inch strips. I'm just sorting those into bins, and I'm saving those for my next retreat because I have found that those are fantastic additions to orphan block quilts when you maybe need just one more block and then all this stuff's pre-cut. Just dig through it, find what you need, make another block, put it all together. The other thing I have to share with you guys, I'm gonna have to do a little camera work to share because it's my t-shirt. This is the iron-on, the crystal iron-on that I got at Houston in November. I'm gonna try to get up here so you guys can see it. You see this? These are little scissors with the little stitch line. That is actually a stencil, and I'm gonna move over and just put a picture here because that'll be way easier. So this is my stencil. It's still got paint on it, which is why it's kind of blotchy. You can see scissors, and then it has the stitch lines. I got this shirt at the thrift store for like $3, and then I used a red sparkly paint after consulting with Jules. I thought I was gonna end up mixing paints, but my red sparkly paint worked perfect. And it was just a t-shirt fabric paint. It wasn't a spray paint or anything super special, just a t-shirt fabric paint I already had. Let that dry, and then I just followed the instructions for ironing on the crystals. And I am gonna put a link to the gal who sells these, because she not only sells them, but she has very thorough instructions. She has like videos on YouTube and stuff. So I'm gonna put a link to that in case you too would like a sparkly shirt that shares your sewing love. Last but definitely not least, I have started receiving Talk to Me Tuesday jelly rolls. So there will be 12 of us, including me, and so far I have received 4. We are 1/3 of the way there. I have gotten from Susan, from Jennifer R, Robin, and I have gotten from Rainey. So I love seeing what you guys are sending, and I cannot wait to get to sort all of these out. You guys have plenty of time, and I'm not super worried about anybody being late. I've already pulled all my fabric. I just need to cut it into strips, which I am planning to do probably this afternoon, because I would like to get the giant pile of fabric I made on my table off my table. I did ask everyone to send me a piece of paper with their signature and location on it, or like a picture of your signature. However you want to do it is fine with me. And I am making quilt labels for everyone. This is printable fabric from EQ, and everyone will get a quilt label back with their jelly roll. So make sure you include your signature, either physically or just send me a picture. And that is definitely it for me. It was plenty to share for one day. You guys have a wonderful week, have a crafty week, and I will see you next week. Bye.